Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Sheets, and I'm going to be doing a preview of the MLB slate for this evening. It's a really, really full slate. So we're going to, I don't know, we'll have some, I want to say some fun with this, but we'll have some fun with this. We'll go through the sheets, we'll go through the stacks, we'll do a kind of a full-on preview, and then we'll also go ahead and do some lineup builds as well, maybe, just to kind of get started. With respect to yesterday, I, I, I did go kind of crazy. I actually played all that Angels stuff. I played the Angels with Tyler Anderson as well. But these guys got me with the late game. But I'm telling you, the more I play MLB, the more I really am convinced that you just can't play what's obvious. You just can't do it, because it doesn't come in as much as you think, and when it does come in, you're fighting with so many people. So yeah, as far as tonight, it looks as though we have a postponement already. The Yankees. Well, wait a minute. I don't know exactly what all this means, so someone can kind of help me figure out what's going on with the Yankees. Oh, it's postponed. It says postponed. All right, good. That makes it a little bit easier to deal with. But we do have like quite a few games here. So first thing I like to do is just check the weather real quick, and then I'll share my screen. It looks as though I don't know. Washington obviously is always possible to have an issue. Atlanta, Colorado, they usually seem to want to play, so that should be okay. And the Yankee game, as it looks like here, has been already postponed, so that's good news. So let's take a little time today, and let's just go through all this, and we'll look at the slate from the way I look at it. Okay, so first of all, what's the size of the slate? So you have 5, 10, 15, I mean, just a ton of games, okay? The next thing I want to look at is where the late swap opportunities are, okay? Because as you hopefully have been following along when I do my process reviews and things like that, the more you can late swap, the better in late swap sports. And the first spot I see for a late swap is between the 7-10 and 8-10 games. You have 3 that start right at 7 o'clock, and then you have a whole bunch of 8-10s. And then I would actually recommend that you late swap again at 8:30, only because that Atlanta at Colorado game is probably going to be really popular. So it's always a good idea to take a chance to late swap before the most popular game on the slate. And then, I mean, if you want to be really, really technical, you'll do one before the 9:40 Philadelphia Arizona game and another one before the 10 o'clock Pittsburgh Dodger game. So it's a long night, and it's a Friday night. So it's again, if you want to really, really grind and play perfectly, this is a good night to do it, because most people are not going to do it. I mean, honestly, like a lot of people are going to go out for Friday night, just chill or whatever. Maybe just set their lineups and never late swap or whatever. But if you're going to be playing anything big, I mean, you're really going to be battling with people who are going to commit to this. So this is a slate where the harder worker is going to have a pretty big advantage. Okay, so that is something to consider. The second thing that I'll notice, before you even look at the projections here, is, I mean, for a huge slate like this, there's a noticeable, I guess, dearth of pitching. You know, you have, I mean, who died and said Jack Flaherty should be 10,500? You know, it's the last time he did anything. I mean, we'll talk about that. And then you have Crochet, who, you know, when's the last time that he actually threw innings? He's seemingly on a pitch count the whole rest of the season. And then then you're down to these other options here. So I would imagine when we get to the projections, you'll see Robbie Ray once again at probably pretty big chalk against Detroit. But aside from that, I mean, what pitching looks good here? You know, and listen, we'll do the projections and we'll get back to it. But interesting. And as far as the hitting goes, I mean, usually when you have not a great bunch of pitching options, you have good hitting options. So I think got to keep an eye on this. Now I would imagine that Atlanta, Colorado, just because it is what it is going to be, you know, probably the most likely stack on the board. But again, there's huge slate. Here's another interesting one I want to look at for a second before we even get into the projections. Whenever Seattle's playing, you always have to think about the other pitcher because they do kind of give up strikeouts. But Jose Quintana, I mean, his lefty stinks. You know, I'm probably not going to do that. But we'll get into that in a minute. And also of note is the San Francisco-Detroit game is the last game on the board. So Robbie Ray, who could be the most popular pitcher on the board, might be the latest game on the board, which does impact a late swap in some way. And the slate starts with this Toronto-Oakland game, Houston, Boston. That could certainly produce, you know, San Diego, Miami with Cabrera. Okay, so let's take a look. Let's take a look at the sheets for these games. Right? And I like to look at it from a top-down perspective. So let's just pull the sheet up here and let's just see what this looks like. So we're rating everything again by this column H, which is sheets value score, which represents a combination of raw points per dollar, things like that. For those of you that used to be or are still at Roto Grinders, there was a thing called RG value or something that RGV, I think, where they kind of like have their own formula to account for all that stuff, you know. And I think that a lot of other sites do something similar, and I created my own. So this is what I like to look at when you rate projections, really for all sports. First things first, with these pitchers, there's usually one pitcher that you get a sheets value score of 40, but you're really not getting that today. The highest one on the board is Jack Flaherty, and I mentioned this earlier. I mean, who died and left him at 10-5, and I guess a lot of people died and let him be 10-5 because certainly putting up a really good projection here. I have a feeling that if I went into the game logs, I would not be particularly impressed. But as far as the sheets go, he certainly looks to be the best play. And his ownership at 33%, I think it's commensurate with somebody that might be the best play on a big slate. You know, you can't put him more than this. There's just too many other options. Then you have, as I suspected, Robbie Ray at, you know, he's actually having tied with Aaron Savali as far as value score. And then you'll see that Robbie Ray does have twice the ownership of Aaron Savali. So if you were just, again, if you didn't want to use SaberSim and you didn't want to like get too fancy, but you did want to use the TrueDFS or my projections or whatever, this is one thing you just can kind of do. You can say, okay, we have a value score similar or the same, and one of them is half the ownership of the other. So, you know, if you wanted to hand build and just play somebody, Aaron Savali would probably be a good option. So if I was just going to get hand build, I would start my lineups maybe with Flaherty, Savali. As a matter of fact, want to do that just for fun? Let's just see what this would look like. Now, again, I don't play this way really. I mean, I like to use SaberSim and get a little more, you know, make it probably a little more complicated than it has to be. But if you want it to be simple, you play Flaherty, and then you get a little different by playing Savali. You fade Robbie Ray, and you're kind of done with it. Unless you wanted to play Robbie Ray and Savali, then you're fading Flaherty, which is fine too. But I think this Savali play is very intriguing. And then Berrios would be the next one, I think, because he's not that far behind these others, and you're still getting like a really decent ownership discounts at 12%. And when you get down to Bryce Miller, now you're starting to, you know, lose some projection value here. Martin Perez is interesting because he's a little bit lower, but I'm at 3%. And you know, 3% is really low, to say the least. And then you have Mitch Spence at 2%. So all of these guys over here, Houck, Spence, Perez, I think they're all in play in GPPs, just because of their low ownership and how close they are to these others. Zach Wheeler, he probably one I would avoid. You know, his value score is low. His ownership is not particularly low. So he'd probably be one I would avoid. So what's going to be the difference between these builds? So listen, if you played Flaherty and Savali, yeah, it'll open up a whole bunch of stuff. But if you played Savali and Ray, for example, it would open up everything. And if you played, say, Savali and Spence or something like that, or Savali and Perez, then you open up the universe. Now, what does that mean? Open up the universe? Well, let's talk about that. Let's get into the stacks a little bit here, and we'll analyze these in the way that we always do. So let's pull up the stack page, and again, I apologize for making this about people that might be here for the first time, but I don't do these solo all the time. So what we're going to do is we're going to rank the stacks, and this is available on TrueDFS. We're going to rate the stacks in 3 different ways. One by column B, which is by raw points, basically. One by column E, which is basically points per dollar, and column column H, which modified stack is basically Sheet's value score. And what it does is for DraftKings, it identifies the 5 projected guys. Again, lineups can change, so all this will change. That would make up, for example, the best raw, stack, the best value stack, and the best kind of modified value stack. So by default, it starts with modified stack score. So let's start, though, by going on the left, and let's start with just raw points. So raw points, as I alluded to earlier, I mean, Atlanta, being in Colorado, I would have laid serious odds that this was going to be the highest raw points projection, and it is. And their ownership looks to be the highest. It's not through the roof high, but it's pretty high. And then just to kind of see, you go down and you get Philly, Dodgers, and then see a little drop from Philly to Dodgers, a little drop from Dodgers to Boston. It's all BS if you want to know the truth. I mean, these are so close. But Boston, Colorado, KC, we'll group these together for the sake of argument, and then we'll drop down to, say, Houston and Cincinnati. And what I like to look at is to see what kind of discount you get as far as ownership goes by dropping from one to the other. So if you took the hit as far as projection goes and got down to Philly or the Dodgers, for example, I mean, you do get to save some in ownership, I think that this is all pretty efficient, actually. I think the discount you get as far as ownership goes when you get down to these guys is probably commensurate with their projections. So I don't think it's like a really, really huge coup, you know what I mean, to go ahead and play, I get to play, the Dodgers instead because they're going to be, some 28% ownership as opposed to 45 because they are projected to be lower as far as their output. Let's take a look at just the pure point per dollar values, and as usual, the White Sox are just kind of showing up here just because they're all so cheap. Because hint, they're all really bad. Not really bad. Okay, there's Brooks Baldwin. By the way, he can swing. He swings hard. Vargas isn't bad. Benintendi's been having more power than normal. So this is actually the best value stack on the board here. As a matter of fact, there's a pretty decent sized drop from the White Sox to anybody else. So that is something that should be respected. Miami, Toronto, Houston, Detroit, all really, really close. And then we look on the right for modified stack score, and you get to see the White Sox again. And then the Braves would be the next one, and then Toronto. So Atlanta is the one that's showing up in multiple screens, right? They're showing up in raw points, and they're showing up in modified stack. The White Sox is showing up in modified stack and points per dollar. I guess the other one I would mention is maybe, what did I say, Toronto or Houston? I'm trying to find a pivot. I guess Houston is like close. So Houston is almost there in raw points, sort of almost there in modified stack. So I guess they would be the next one. So I would say White Sox, Atlanta, and Houston. Okay. As far as my stacks, if in fact we're not going to use SaberSim, if in fact we were just going to hand build or something like that. So let's try to put all this together. All right. And then listen, we'll use SaberSim, we'll do builds and whatever, but let's try to put all this together. So we have a couple of ways we could go as far as our pitching. You could either, again, spend up and play, say, if you played Flaherty with like Ray. When I say spend up, I mean spend up with ownership as well. If you played that, this is the kind of the chalk build. So I don't think you really can play Atlanta if you can even afford them anyway. So I think if you did this, you probably have to play one of those others, like something like the White Sox or Houston as like your main stack. And also, these are the ones you can afford. So let me just see what that would look like. Let's forget Atlanta, and let's try to put one together with the White Sox and Houston just to see kind of what it would look like. So with the White Sox, it would be Benintendi, Baldwin, Vargas, Sosa, Robert. So let's just jam all this in and see what that looks like. So Robert's only 4,600. Vargas, I don't know what position to put him in. For now, we'll put him in at third base at 2,800. Benintendi, 2,300. I mean, this is so cheap, And then you have, where's Brooke Baldwin? What does he play? Second base or shortstop? I mean, this is like obscene, And then the last one you could put in, I don't know, whichever one you want. Vaughn, maybe? So you put Vaughn at 4,600. So you could do this, spend all the way up as much as you want, play Flaherty and Ray, and then you jam in these White Sox, and then you could basically fill this in with even the Atlantas. I wonder if even this is going to be too chalky, though. So maybe something like White Sox with Houston or something like that. But this is definitely what you'd want to do. Now, just to see whether you can get away with playing both these guys with, say, I don't want to put in Atlanta because you're not going to do it. You're not playing Flaherty, Ray with like a 5-man Atlanta stack, even if you could. That'd be way too chalky. But what about Houston? Tanner Houck is not bad, so it's not as if it's an easy play, which is what makes it kind of a good play. So let's see what the Houston stuff looks like. That would be something like, well, we'd have to try to play Alvarez at 5,800. Singleton, I guess, 2,500. He makes it work. Bregman for sure. It's a question of whether we can afford Altuve, but we have to try, I guess, if we're going to do this. And then either McCormick or DeCenzo, right? DeCenzo would be nice at 2K. That would make this work. So you could play a 5-man Houston stack really, really easily. And if you didn't want to do that, if you want to play McCormick and spend a little bit more money, oops, let's put him back in. Actually, not even. He's 2,200. So any 5 of these 6 are going to work, and you don't even have to do this. You could play Pena or whatever. So I think this is actually not bad. Now, again, how could get a rolling and Houston can look really, really ugly, but if you're going to play Flaherty and Ray, that's what the deal is. Now, what I want to look at is what to do if you want to play Atlanta. All right. So we talked about something like Ray and Savali as a possibility. Okay, because remember, let's not lose sight of what we're doing here. We already looked at the projections. We looked at the ownership. We're trying to find kind of low-owned or lower-owned options here. And I think if you combine Ray with Savali, I think that's not bad. I think you might want to do another one, though. I think you might want to punt Ray and get him out of there also if you're going to play Atlanta. But let's see what it costs to get all these Atlantas. Let's say we were not paying attention to value, like kind of at all. It would be something like Riley and Soler. I guess I would start with that. Riley, Soler. And then, wait, Murphy, Duvall. I think Duvall would be my next one, my next favorite, 3,200. And then what? Would it be Ozuna? Or, so if you want to pay up, you go Ozuna. I'll show you what I mean. If you want to play Ozuna and Olsen, you can't play all of them, right? And then Murphy. Like these are the ones that you're choosing from. And then Arcia, what position is he? Is he shortstop nowadays? Yeah. So you have all these Atlanta guys you could choose from. And the reason I throw all these in here is it's pretty clear that you can probably get to all of them. You just got to find decent one-offs. And you can't play all of these guys. You can't play probably Olsen and, well, can you? Can you play Olsen? You play all 5 of these? I mean, you could. You want to know why? Because you have all those freaking White Sox that you can play, So if you played Savali and Ray, you could jam in all of these Atlantas and make it work, okay? So from an overall look at the slate, I think these are the key teams that you want to focus on. Atlanta, White Sox, and then would be my pivot. And then pitching wise, Ray and Flaherty best plays, and then Savali with all those other bow wows I talked about earlier, the Spence and I forgot the other one I mentioned, but those other 6K guys, Martin Perez. So let's see what the difference is. Let's pull up SaberSim and run a build here. Where is SaberSim? Where, as they say, did my SaberSim go? So we'll log in here. We'll do this right from scratch. Okay, we'll upload the projections. So this is kind of like to steal from my friend Adam Share. This is going to be like a build as if the slate were starting in a half an hour, right, or something like that. I like the way that's phrased. Okay, so let's upload to. I mean, you don't have to use mine. You can use SaberSim. It doesn't matter because these are all going to change, and the projections themselves are not. I shouldn't say aren't as important, but so Brooks Lee. Okay, so he's out. We'll have to remember to deal with that. Okay, so let's build. Well, it's going to be the knuckleball or something like that today. So we're going to build a full 150, and let's do one thing different. Let's instead of setting it to 20 max, let's do the initial 5,000 lineup build with this 150 max setting. I don't think it makes as much of a difference as others might. I know that Andrew from SaberSim sort of recommends that you do separate builds for different contests. Yeah, I guess. And you know what? In a huge slate like this one, maybe that makes a little more sense. Because usually 5,000 lineups is just plenty to choose from. Like if I can't find a good build out of 5,000 lineups for whatever contest I'm in, I'm probably doing something else wrong. But for 15 games or however many games there are tonight, 5,000 really isn't all that much. So maybe we should do separate builds for the lower entry limits than the higher ones. But for the purposes of this, we're gonna fire. Now, feel free to put whatever questions you have in the chat. I'll be happy to answer them. I do have a little bit more time. Okay. So what I like to do is I like to look first at what we would get without doing anything, without doing the sims or whatever. And again, all this is about, right? We built 5,000 lineups. The rest of the process is used to determine which of those 5,000 we're going to play. Okay, like how are we going to fill all of our contests from these 5,000? How are we going to rank them? All right, so that's really all this is. So how is it being ranked now by default? So by default, since it's a large slate, if you have the SaberSim large slate default setting, and if you click on the eyeball here, you'll see what this is. So the formula is 0.3 times the sum of my projections, plus that's of the whole lineup, plus 0.7 times the 99th percentile outcome of the lineup, which is good to see that it's prioritizing, you know, some heavy duty upside there. And then it's subtracting 0.6 times the average adjusted ownership. So this build or this ranking system that they're putting out there for you by default is already somewhat aggressive. Okay, so I mean, if you didn't have access to the Sims or whatever, I mean, you could just pile all these in. Okay, and you would be well within your rights to do that if you want to know the truth. But there are a couple of things you can look at. First is you look at stack exposure. So how many of these stacks are going to be what I call bow wow stacks? You know, like stacks that are not 5 minutes. And then you can make this decision of whether you want to eliminate those bow wow stacks. I like to eliminate them on the big slates. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and check through all these, and all these non-5 mans, with the exception of the 4/4s, I'll keep those. I'll uncheck them from here, and I will hit apply, and then it will eliminate those, not from the whole pool, but from the top 150. Okay, so it's still keeping the same 5,000 to choose from, but the 150 that it's ranking is just not going to include them. Right? Okay. Next thing we'll do is I will look at what type of exposure we get here, and it would be 50% Atlanta and 40% Chicago, and that should come as no surprise, really. It is kind of nicely reaffirming that my projections are pretty good. You know, if SaberSim is going to not my projections are pretty good because it's basing it on my projection, but my analysis of the projection was good enough that without making any sim adjustments or anything, we are getting mostly Atlanta and Philly, and then a whole bunch of other stuff. Okay, when it comes to the pitchers, see we're getting 14 pitchers here, and then not surprisingly, we'd be getting a whole bunch of Flaherty followed by Savali, as I mentioned. Only 11% Robbie Ray, which is a little bit surprising. I guess that's, you know, in part because they want, you know, they're prioritizing paying up for all those Braves, I suppose. So it is getting the similar type of feel to what I was analyzing. But do we want to play? Would we want to play 50% Atlanta over 150 lineups? I personally wouldn't mind. Okay. But if you wanted to diversify a little bit, you can mess with this min uniques thing. And what this will let you do is it will diversify among your lineups and just get you a little more diversification, a few more combinations, and not be reliant on like, you know, too many 1-2-3s or too many 1-2-3-4s or whatever. So what you have to be aware of is when you start messing with stuff, you are almost by definition giving yourself weaker lineups. Now again, weak is kind of a term of art here. You know, it's giving you it won't be giving you your top 150 rated by this metric anymore if you start screwing around. But that's okay because we're hopefully getting something in return for that. Like, for example, what did we do? We took out the bow wow stack. So we're getting at least some peace of mind that we're getting more traditional stacks in return for dumping some of those lineups that might have projected better. And likewise, if we start going min uniques 2, 3, 4 or whatever, then we are getting some lineups that wouldn't otherwise be in the top 150. Now here's a little trick that I just learned the other day using SaberSim is you could kind of like track how badly your adjustments are affecting you. So what you do is you go to create an aggregate metric and you sort by something very, you know, vanilla, like average projected score. Okay. So so what it's doing is it's the 150 that you have here, the average projection is 99.76. Okay. It doesn't matter what the number is. What I'm trying to track here is how much that goes down once I start, you know, tweaking stuff. So the idea is that if I'm going to give myself the benefit of something, I don't want that to be offset more by a terrible projection. So let's just keep an eye on this. So as we go and do min uniques, more than one, let's see what's the first one that gets this projection to really spike down. So average projection went from 99.76 to 99.64. That's really nothing. Let's see if any time it goes down by 1 point. So now it's 99.43. And then here it goes down to 98 point. All right, so that's a 0.8 adjustment. That's almost significant. And there you go. So you'll see again. So you see the average projection is 97.2, where if we went to min uniques 4, it was going to be 98.6. So that's a big deal. So we're going to leave it at min uniques 4 from this build. So if we wanted to, at this point, we could once again just put these in. I would double check to make sure that the stack exposure doesn't give you the bow wow stack. So you try to sneak one in there on me. And then you would put these in. Now, here's the way the stacks would look at this point. Again, still mostly Atlanta, but less White Sox and more Cubs and Phillies. Again, I'm not really too worried about what we're getting. You know, as long as the process is good, you really shouldn't care too much about what you actually get. So I could go ahead and put these guys in. But what we're going to do is we are going to do a contest sim and try to do a little bit better than this. So we're uploading. I created dummy lineups in some of these contests, and just so that I can have something to save. Like, so these are all the tournaments I'm going to be playing. And while it's good to have all these good upside lineups, and we can just do this right now. We can put all these in, right? Put all these in just to show you how to do this. So I can upload these right now. As a matter of fact, let's just go ahead and do that, just for now. And we'll upload these again in case like something atrocious happens to my systems or whatever. Get in a car accident or whatever. At least there's something going on up there. But one of the things, the benefits of this is you could set your contest sim settings right from here. So you look at all this, and this list of my contest lists, contest size of all these, what's the max amount of entries, and then the prize structure, percent to first, percent cash. The only one that doesn't have is this satellite. So we're going to have to create our own custom one for that, which we're going to get to in a minute. But for now, let's go ahead and right-click this, and we're going to add all contest sims. So what this does is it uploads all of this data to the contest simulator, so that when you run them, it will automatically it will tailor your 5,000 lineups to best leverage themselves against these particular contest fields. Now, what does that mean? So what contest fields are we really comparing ourselves to? Well, let's find out. So we go into the contest sim settings here, and it already populated. So what this does, if you click on this, it'll show you what fields you're comparing your 5,000 lineups to. And SaberSim has a bunch of default settings, which are, I think, pretty good. I mean, really. People get really bent out of shape about creating just wildly custom fields. And okay, I mean, if you're good enough, it's certainly better than just relying on a stock field. But these are pretty good. And I'll tell you that SaberSim says they back tested all these, and I know these guys. That's good enough for me, I'll take their word for it until I can come up with something better. Now, in other sports, I think I have come up with something better. But for baseball, no, I really don't think I have. I've tried everything, really. I've tried to just use my 5,000 lineups, okay? I try to use my 5,000 lineups as a proxy, try to like sim them to myself, Unfortunately, no Gribbon, you're asking the wrong one. If you wanted to go into like the Discord channel or something, I don't really know all the pricing I just don't. If anybody in here knows, just let them know. I don't. I really don't know, and I should, I guess, but I don't. I don't know the trials. I don't know all of it. I don't know how much the ultimate is. I really don't. You go to this website. I'm sure you can find it. I'm sure there's a trial or something. But I do want to double check and see what I'm doing here. Okay, so with all these contest sims, let's just take a look. So for the rally cap, they are using the field lineups, the MME. Okay, that's I want to keep that one, so that's good. The ball 4, this one I like to change. Sometimes I'll accept the high stakes 20 match, but sometimes I'll use the high stakes single entry instead. And sometimes I'll use high stakes MME instead. I'm going to keep it this time at the default, high stakes 20. And again, it's my normal, my normal checkpoint. Unless I have a reason to change something that really is powerful, I won't do it. But I will change it if I really want to. So Power Out Alley, I don't even know what this contest is, but we're playing it today. So we're going to medium stakes 20 max. I like that. So it's different than the others. Batter's Eye, medium stakes MME, that looks good to me. Battery single entry, we'll keep the high stakes single entry setting. This is a high stakes single entry for a big time satellite. Then you have the Mega 8s. So the Mega 8s is interesting. So they say high stakes 20 max. I like to change this one to high stakes MME. This is a tough tournament, and I think that calling it high stakes 20 max might understate it because there are people that'll put a bunch of entries in this one. So I like to change this one to high stakes MME. And the upper deck 3 entry, that's mid stakes 20 max. Or I'll leave that for now. One thing I didn't see though, what is this thing? I guess they do have something for this. But why did I not see that before? Let me just see in here. Yeah, so there's this one as well. This one, this satellite to the. So I need to add another one for this thing. This satellite that pays like 1 spot. So what we'll do is we'll go back, and then we'll add another contest sim. We'll call this one another qualifier. And this one we're gonna do high stakes single entry again, but for the payout structure we're going to do a custom one where we're only gonna have 25 entries in this, and it's only gonna pay 1 spot. So let's call it 90% for first, and then total 10% entries pays. I guess that makes sense. So we added our own for that other contest. So now we're ready to go at least. So boom. So we're going to run the contest sims, and it's amazing. It's so fast. I mean, they're simulating this 50,000 times or something like that. It is actually quite amazing that this can be done. And I think this whole process of simming all this takes about 15 seconds. That's crazy. So let's so what have we done? We've run our 5,000 lineups. Okay, let's go back to Min Uniques 1 for a minute. It doesn't matter. We've had 5,000 lineups built. We built them with an eye for 150 max. So that could be a mistake when it comes to applying this set to some of these tournaments. But I think that we could find good lineups for those as well from this set. We used good custom projections, good custom ownership. And then we used good set of contest sims, and now it's a question of just ranking these things by risk-adjusted ROI and putting them in and filling them. So what I want to start with is the knuckleball, or what's it called? It's called the rally cap actually. And so let's go to rally cap, risk-adjusted ROI. We're ranking by risk-adjusted ROI, and I don't really care too much who we get. This is our exposure, but I've had a lot of success literally not looking, which is kind of strange when you think about it. But again, we have our biases, and if you let your biases overwhelm your process, you're probably doing yourself a disservice. So the next thing I want to do before I put these in is go back to this min uniques thing, right? So let's go back average projected score, save metrics, right? So see 97.58, and let's just keep going, more min uniques until it yells at us. So 97.6, 97.69, so it's even better. And then I just want to make sure I don't 97.2. Okay, so this is pretty good also. We didn't really get dinged yet. All right, so this is 0.7. That's a pretty big ding. Let's just see this next one. And then you're dead. Okay, so you could either go min uniques 5 or min uniques 4 for a slate like this. I just want to just make sure that we don't have any bow wow stacks. Okay, so no 3-2-2s, no 3-2s. We'll get rid of these. And I think this is would be a good, listen, presuming that the slate started now, which it does not, I think this would be a good thing to do. So we put these in just like that. Right? And then we just keep going on. You know, so let's do the ball 4. Now again, Jordan gave me a little bit of suggestions to go min uniques 1 and this only list one lineup, but I still don't see how that helps me. You know, I still think that if I made a 1 lineup, I would still get the top one. If I made it 150, I would get the top one. So I'm just going to keep it like this. We're going to adjust it we're sorting by risk adjusted ROI. That one's at the top, I presume, right? Which is 148.4, this one 140. Yeah, so I don't think it helps me to change this to you know, 1 lineup, like for example. So let's we'll keep this one, and that's the ball 4. There's one other thing that we could do if we want, and I'm going to get to that in a second. So what you could do is if you're dealing with lineups with contests that have very similar settings, what you could do is kind of group them all together and do min uniques 2 or 3s to make sure that, you know, that same lineup is not duped in this you know, in a similar type of contest. Like for example, let's use the single entry stuff, which well actually, yeah. So let's go to the single entry stuff, which was the World Championship qualifier, for example, or this battery. Sorry, so battery, single entry, risk adjusted ROI. Okay. And let's do this to min uniques like more like 2 or 3, right? And then so this what we could do is we could have all these results be a little bit different from each other, but at least by a minimum of 3. And then we could fill like all of these kind of single entry tournaments together. And I think that's a pretty reasonable idea here. So let's do that. And then all that would be left would be the batter's eye. And the batter's eye is actually more of a flagship MME type thing. So let's just go with whatever that says. Let's see, flag. Oh, we still have to do the Q. Oh, I think we already did. So the batter's eye, we'll just go whatever that says. And we'll go min uniques 3 there as well. And we'll put that in here. And then I think that will handle everything. And this is the way you play. I mean, this is the way I play. We put these in, and unfortunately, the way baseball works, being a late swap sport, is if you do all your homework the night before, you prepare for the slate, you get an incredible bunch of projections, you continue to, you know, you build your lineups, you pay for a SaberSim Ultimate, for example, or you don't, and you build the stuff, and then you take care of making sure the stacks are what you want and the exposure what you want or whatever, and then you put them in, and you've been an expert, your day has just gotten started. Okay, once once the slate starts, because as I mentioned, every time you have that ability to late swap, you should be able, or you should try to take advantage of it. Okay, so if no questions, this is again kind of an insight to kind of beginning to end how I would analyze a slate, and if the slate started at 1 o'clock, which it does not. But I would be kind of comfortable with all of this if the slate did start at 1 o'clock, which it does not. All right. Hopefully Bobby will be there with me at 6 to go over late changes and do some more lineup builds.